Hello. To the chagrin of my mother, I love the F word, the real F word. Now, I realize that that's not probably a namaste way of living, and it makes my third eye angry every time that word comes flying out of my mouth. But in reality, there just isn't a better word sometimes to express an emotion, to tell someone where to go, or to remind the driver just how great he is behind the wheel. I like to think of the F word as the Swiss Army knife of words. It can get you out of a bind, it can cut you, and it can screw you. As much as I love the infamous F word, there's actually another F word that I despise. The word is fine. Fine. Think of how often you hear that in our society. How are you today? I'm fine, thanks. What does that really mean? Are we really having a conversation? I know nothing about how her day actually is, how she's feeling, or how she's showing up into the world. When she says fine, it means the conversation should just move on. Are you mad at me? No, I'm fine. Which really tells us you're mad at me, right? The air suddenly goes out of the room, and we start to get mad because you don't know that I'm mad at you, and not everything is fine at this point. And then there's the big one. How do I look in this outfit? You look fine. And then it all starts to unwind, right? Fine? Just fine? No, you look great. You look great. But the reason that she only heard the word fine is because fine in our society today no longer means special. She knows that she is not going to feel her best because she's going to be curbed in fine all day long. When I was rolling into my 30s, I was living a very fine life. But I also had what's called smiling depression. The National Association on Mental Health refers to smiling depression as people who are able to show up in their lives, and yet inside they're feeling very conflicted, right? Smiling depression is hard. There are people in this room who have smiling depression. Hollywood likes to tell us that people with depression are living in a dark, dank little apartment, recluse, away from everybody else. But the reality is that most people with smiling depression are in fact married, well-educated, and well-employed. Your neighbor may very well have smiling depression. I hate fine. I hate everything that the word has come to represent. I've been fine. When we are looking for our purpose in life, we need to move past a place of being fine. Danielle Quisera is a data analyst and engineer with Yahoo Labs in Barcelona. But prior to being with Yahoo Labs, he was working at Cambridge University. Every day, he would ride his bike from his apartment to Cambridge. The app on his phone told him to take the most efficient route, which was down Massachusetts Avenue. Now, if anyone's ever been to Boston, you know that Mass Ave is a major thoroughfare in the city. He would not find any joy in the ride. He would just simply be ecstatic that he got there without getting run over. Then one day, he took a turn. He went off of Massachusetts Avenue, and suddenly he discovered tree-lined streets, historic homes, open areas, people who actually looked him in the eye and wanted to connect. His app had not told him about that route. And yet, it only added 1 minute more to his journey. Why are we so quick to follow the app that's going to make us the most efficient? Why instead are we not looking for our happy path? So Daniel Crisciera and his team decided to create a social experiment. They asked people between A and B, what do you think is the most beautiful photo? Where do you think there's the happiest place? Where do you think this feels like the quietest place? And by doing so, they were able to take those results, overlay them with technology, and they were able to create what he calls the Happy Maps, an app that you can use on your phone that will tell you not only the most efficient route, but the happiest, most beautiful, and quietest. When I'm in London, I always make it a point to visit Hyde Park. It is truly one of the happiest places in the world for me. Now I have a route. I enter at Knightsbridge after I've done my shopping at Harrods, and I walk across the park to Kensington Palace. Now as the crow flies, it's only about 1.5 miles. If I was to take the tube, it would take 6 minutes. In a taxi with traffic, about 20. And for those 20 minutes, I would sit in the back of a taxi, looking at my phone, looking at all the fake lives that are being shared on Instagram, and the latest face brag. And the world would go by, and I wouldn't be paying attention. And I would get to my destination, I would thank my cabbie, and I would chuck that into the baskets of fine experiences I've had in my life. Instead, I make a point of walking the park. And when I enter the park, I'm suddenly met with all sorts of choices. This allows me to snake from north to south to east to west. I know where I'm headed, but I don't know where the path is going to take me. By walking, I'm able to enjoy the children learning how to ride horses at the Hyde Park stable. Or I get to watch couples who are walking hand in hand, discussing the day that they've had. I've seen dogs roll with joy amongst the grass. I've seen production teams that are setting up a music festival for the weekend. I wouldn't have seen any of this if I was in the black taxi. I make it to the Serpentine. I then head on to the Royal Albert Hall, a building that's older than the town I live in. I marvel at the history, at the people who have taken the stage, at the architectural significance of that building. And then I continue on, and I watch the geese on the round pond in the shadow of Kensington Palace, which as an Anglophile is like the mothership calling me home. And I continue on, and I've made it to my destination. There's a bench that sits just down from Kensington Palace that I always sit at. I take respite there, not because the journey is long or because I'm winded, but because I don't want the moment to end. By just sitting, I hear laughter. I hear children. I hear birds. I hear the whirl of the city just outside the fence. I hear the heavy breathing of the runners running past. And all of those noises allow me to begin my creativity, my storytelling, and my inspiration. Earlier, I mentioned that you should be selfish. Selfish is not because you should be collecting the most, but selfish because you are the person who's going to figure out how to live your best life. So let's talk about where your happiness path will take you. When you leave this evening, I want you to think about going on a completely different route. Go past the bay and watch the beautiful sunset. Perhaps you go a few blocks earlier, make that right turn, and watch the children play in the park, right? Or perhaps you stay in the car, drive around long enough to finish the inspirational podcast that you've just discovered. This is all about finding your happiness and not living in a place of just being fine. Why are we so quick to want to be stuck in a place of fine? I've been there. It's not a fun place to live. So I implore you, as you move home this evening, don't rely on an app to get you from point A to fine, but instead look forward to the journey that's going to get you to a destination called happiness.